Hello once again, everybody, and thank you for joining me in the Bettor's Box. It's BangTheBook.com's MLB betting podcast for Monday, April 15th. I am your host, Adam Burke. This and every edition of the Bettor's Box presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook, 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. Monday, Thursday format here with the Bettor's Box, as you know. So we'll be back on the air again on Thursday with another edition of the show. With this being Monday, we will have a Monday mailbag. It is kind of a longer Monday mailbag segment here as well. If you ever have questions for the mailbag, at Skating Tripods on Twitter or Adam at BangTheBook.com. You can email those over to me. That's also how you can get on the list for the show notes as well. Adam at BangTheBook.com. Just ask to get put on the list. I'll make sure that I do that. Over at BangTheBook.com right now, we've got my daily picks and tips piece. We've got NBA series previews and playoff predictions for all of the games of the first round, so you want to make sure you're checking that out. Also, make sure you're checking out Parker Michaels and his work on the NHL playoffs here, as those are obviously in full swing. Next Tuesday, we'll do an NFL draft pod. I'm not sure who I'm going to have on it as of yet, but we'll do something special for the draft, some of the prop betting stuff that's out there, all those types of things. So, like I said, we'll do some one-off type stuff with some special edition shows. We'll do one for the NFL draft, and we'll probably do another one here for the Kentucky Derby, which is coming up the first week of May. All right, so for the Bettor's Box today, we'll start with the Monday mailbag. Then we'll go beyond the box score. I'll go down the lines, talk about line moves dating back to Friday. No pick for today. I'll explain why later. Then a look at the week ahead here with 5 series coming up that all have some intrigue, and that'll make up for the pick because I've got some thoughts on some of those games coming up here this week. But we start with the Monday mailbag segment here and a multi-part question from Mark via email. He says, having a hard time reading the line moves with the ERA and xFIP moves. When does the market start looking at this year's ERA and xFIP numbers versus last year's? When should you start looking at this year's data? Well, I think that we're kind of in sort of a transitional period now. You've got a lot of starters that have already made 3 starts, so they've got sample sizes of, 20 or so innings. I think we're going to start seeing that transition to this year's numbers here probably in about a week or so as everyone gets a 4th start, maybe some guys getting a 5th start under their belts. I mean, look, these guys are going to make 30 starts this year, so about a 6th of their performance would be in the books, about a 5th of the performance for some of these other guys. So we will start to see that transition to some of this year's numbers. But one thing I can tell you is that I don't think we're seeing as many ERA and xFIP moves as we typically see in a given year. I think we're seeing more of the big ERA to FIP moves, not xFIP, but FIP. One of the reasons why, and I've talked a lot about this and why I don't think xFIP is that great of a statistic anymore, is that with the fluctuating home run to fly ball percentage, which xFIP assumes a league average home run to fly ball percentage, a lot of guys just aren't going to be at that point. A lot of guys will either be much lower than the league average or much higher than the league average. You generally don't have a lot of guys that fall right around average. So I think xFIP has lost some of its validity in the betting market, and I agree with that sentiment. It's something that I've talked about for the last couple of years here on the show, something that seems like it's getting a little bit more run now at this point in time. So I think we're seeing a lot more ERA to FIP moves, which is why we're not seeing moves against a guy like Miles Mikolas. We're not seeing moves to quite the same extent on some of these guys. If we post a FIP in the 330s or the 340s and xFIP up over 4, well, they're probably not going to post that league average home run to fly ball percentage. The betting market has come to terms with this. So, again, we're seeing more ERA and FIP-related moves as opposed to xFIP. So, as you're going through and looking at some of these guys that may see some action, some steam out there in the betting markets, look at FIP more so than xFIP, especially because as you look around the league this year, the average across the league for home run to fly ball percentage for starting pitchers is 14.5%. Last year, it was only 13.1%. So the juice ball having a big impact on home run to fly ball percentage. So you have to understand that your scale has to change with the run environment in Major League Baseball. So because we're seeing more home runs this year, the guys that allow a lot of home runs, they're going to be even higher than they probably were last year. The guys that allow fewer home runs will still from last year, but still well below the league average for home run to fly ball percentage. So, again, very important to understand the context of what's going on here league-wide, where more home runs, more exit velocity, more batted ball distance, all these types of things are going to have an impact on xFIP specifically. So, again, FIP is going to be a better indicator for you, and there are even better indicators out there like a SIERA, like a DRA, stuff like that. I don't want to confuse everybody too much. I know I use a lot of statistics and information here on the show that you may not be familiar with, but you want to look more at FIP than xFIP this year, and that's really been the case over the last few years, but it seems like now it's the case for the driving force behind line moves as well. So xFIP is largely becoming an irrelevant statistic, I think, in terms of both line moves and how you want to evaluate pitchers. So this is a change that we've had to adapt to here in terms of getting ahead of the market, that the market is not using xFIP nearly as much as it used to. It's more about the gap between ERA and FIP, not ERA and xFIP. Mark also asked here, he said, you talked about pitch to contact guys last time. Which stats show who is or who isn't, or which teams' offenses are good contact hitting lineups or not? Is it as simple as strikeout percentage? And to that point, what is the league average for strikeout percentage and some of the other key stats? So this year, the strikeout percentage average for all pitchers is 23.4%. Just for starters, it's 23.1%. For K per 9, strikeouts per 9 innings, league average is exactly 9.00, so a strikeout per inning. Just starters, 8.78 in terms of the K per 9. So, again, league average for starting pitchers, 23.1% strikeout rate. And obviously this year with what we see with the juiced balls, the more strikeouts, the better off a guy's going to be. So keep in mind, 23.1% is the league average for starters. Anybody below that, you certainly have to take a deeper look into that matchup for them. Anybody above that, you would certainly think that they're in pretty good shape. Now, as far as contact lineups go, there are a lot of different ways you can attack this. You can certainly look at strikeout percentage. If you've got a low strikeout percentage, you make a lot of contact, that's a good thing. An average walk rate, a lot of times you're going to have a lot of teams that strike out a lot, but also walk a lot. If you've got a team that strikes out a low percentage of the time, but still draws walks, that's a pretty good asset, a pretty good attribute for that lineup. Now, as far as good contact lineups, you can look at average exit velocity on StatCast. That's one thing that you can do. And I do have, over on our Bang the Book YouTube page, I've got a video, a couple of videos actually, how to use Fangraphs for handicapping baseball and how to use StatCast for handicapping baseball. So I definitely recommend checking out those two videos. I'll put links to those in the notes here for today. So if you want to get on the notes list, adam@bangthebook.com. I'll also be putting a link to the podcast in there from here on as well. You can look at BABIP. A lot of times people think that high BABIPs are luck or speed-based. To a degree, they are. If you've got a big-time outlier, there's a lot of luck factors involved with BABIP. But also, as we've gotten more of an understanding of contact management, and as teams have, sort of changed some of their hitting philosophies to emphasize contact and quality contact at that, I think BABIP can be a pretty good indicator of that as well. There aren't as many speed guys that are out there anymore. A lot of walk guys, a lot of power guys, stuff like that. BABIP isn't as predicated on speed as it used to be. So I think when you've got a high BABIP team, batting average on balls in play, that's a pretty good indicator of contact quality. So that's a good contact hitting lineup that I think you want to take a stronger look at. Also, you want to look at teams with high weighted on base averages and lower walk rates. Because what that means is that they're hitting their way on base, and they're hitting their way on base with extra base hits. So a high weighted on base average and a lower walk rate. The Mariners, the Twins, the Astros, the Diamondbacks, the Nationals, and the Athletics, all teams that are top 11 in weighted on base average right now with walk rates below 10%. So that's a pretty good indicator of a good contact lineup as well. If you're able to carry a high weighted on base average without a good walk rate, it means you're making a lot of positive contact with a lot of extra base hits, doubles and home runs specifically. So the Mariners, Twins, Astros, Diamondbacks, Nationals, and A's right now, early on in the season, would be the best contact hitting lineups that I would point to. Then obviously teams that walk a lot, they're going to give themselves a lot of chances with runners in scoring position and things of that sort. So those are some of the things that I look at there in terms of evaluating good contact lineups. And Mark, as always, appreciate the questions. We transition away from baseball for a couple of minutes here. Alter via email asking me here, what do you think about taking a basketball game that is supposed to be close, like this past Monday's national championship game, and look to live bet exclusively for arbitrage purposes? And this is a really good question because, to me, this is the future of betting on sports. I think it's getting increasingly more difficult to beat full game lines. The odds makers are getting more efficient. You're getting a smarter crop of odds maker out there that is using more of these analytics, has a better understanding of where line moves are going to come from. And so I think full game betting is becoming very, very difficult to beat. I think the strategies that you want to incorporate here across most of the sports would be derivative betting. And a lot of people are live trading games these days, to Alter's question here. And like I said, I think that's the future of betting on sports. Scraping, middling, arbitrage, big groups putting together large sums of money to live bet games and get as many free rolls and as many middles as possible. Because live betting is still very inefficient. You've got some shops, probably in the offshore marketplace, that do have, live traders looking to price these things and stuff like that. But for the most part, live betting is formulaic or algorithmic, however you want to look at it, in that it's the full game is this, our halftime line is this, there's this much time in the game, the score is this, and the system spits out a line. Well, it's not always going to take into account injuries, foul trouble, simply how the game is playing out. It's hard for a lot of people because a lot of people don't have the bankroll size, the resources, the availability, because these lines move very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. You sometimes have, 10 seconds to 15 seconds to get in a bet, which is what makes it really difficult to sit there and arbitrage and middle and live bet because you just don't have that window that you need to do it. That's why there are a lot of big groups out there that will have multiple screens up. They'll be doing multiple games at once, several people in the room doing it. That's the future of this business in terms of making money with it. Full game betting is becoming much, much more difficult to crack. Live betting is where it's at, or even playing the derivatives if you want, first half and second half. But again, you have to be able to move a lot of money to have a good ROI on this because you're going to be putting a lot of bets out there at different prices, at different numbers, stuff like that. If you're able to do it with one game and get yourself a start, that's kind of the way you want to do it. Really, to me, I think it's a lot like card counting, quite frankly. You start by counting down a deck. One deck is going to have an exactly 0 count. If you can do that quickly, then you start to advance to 2 decks and 4 decks, and then eventually 6 decks and 8 decks if you want to go that far up. But you've got to start at the bottom with counting one deck. You can count one deck in, 45 seconds or so? Then at that point in time, maybe you cut it down to 30 seconds. Well, then you add another deck to the equation. Live betting is a lot like that in the sense that you want to master doing it with one game, understanding where your opportunities are to get those middles and those arbitrage situations. Then you can start adding more games into the mix at one time, whether you're following box scores, watching the game, whatever it is. It's something that I think is absolutely 100% the way to make money in this business and the future of sports betting. So yes, I completely agree with the idea. It doesn't even have to be a close game. It can just be a game where you can find those middles and find those opportunities. It's definitely the way to do it. Again, it's a challenging thing from a resource standpoint, both financially and also with your time management. Because again, you're going to have to make very, very quick snap decisions. You're going to have to decide, what's 15 cents of juice worth to you? Do you want to check the box where it says you accept any price change? All those types of things. There's a big-time learning curve involved in this, but I do think that is the future of specifically basketball betting, without a doubt. I think it is the future of basketball betting. Obviously, it's a little bit different in football with longer possessions and stuff like that. But as far as basketball goes, absolutely, to me, that's the future. So if that is something that you are capable of doing and something that you do want to do, I think that's something that you definitely want to look to expand your horizons with a little bit more. Question from Seth via email says, I love your usage of analytics. Question in regards to how you interpret the sabermetrics, however. Do you use all the advanced stats in regards towards regression? For example, if Team A is hitting the ball hard at 95 plus miles per hour, they will eventually be a team that will regress. If Team B is having no luck but making a lot of hard contact, do you start playing on them soon? And my answer to this is what my answer to a lot of things is. There are degrees of regression. That's a very important thing, a very important point I like to get across here. There are degrees of regression. If you make a good amount of hard contact, but you're a bad offensive team, it's probably not going to translate to runs because you're either not going to have the guys on base or you're not going to string together these high-velocity batted balls. If you're a pretty good team and you're making a decent amount of hard contact but not having a lot of success with it, then I do fully expect you to get a lot better. I'll talk about a couple of those teams here in a minute. But again, looking back to what we talked about on Thursday, the league batting average on 95-plus mile-per-hour batted balls is .529. You've got some teams that are kind of laggards here. You've got the Rockies, who are 27th at .452, the Indians, who are 24th at .492, Toronto tied for 22nd, I believe it's .496. But the thing is, the Rockies only have 124 batted balls of 95-plus miles per hour. The Indians only have 122. Toronto only has 119. So while they may improve, their batting average will probably go up and be closer towards the average. They're not getting a high number of high-velocity batted balls. So they will get closer to league average on 95-plus mile-per-hour batted balls. But will it translate to more runs? I don't think it will because you don't have as many chances. Now, on the flip side, Boston is 25th at .479 in batting average on batted balls of 95-plus miles per hour. They are 50 points below the league average, but they have 167 of those batted balls. So Boston's offense, most definitely one I would expect to have a high degree of positive regression, whereas a team like Toronto or Cleveland, a lower degree of positive regression. The Mets, they're 26th at .468 on batted balls of 95-plus miles per hour. They have 158 of them. So that's a lot of high-velocity contact that they're not having as much success on as they probably should. Again, that's a high degree of positive regression for me. So, no, everything will regress towards the mean over an infinite period of time, but you want to look for the degrees of regression that have a big difference. Boston and the Mets, lots of high-velocity contact, underachieving so far. I would expect them to have a large degree of positive regression. Rockies, Indians, Blue Jays, they're having some bad luck on the high-velocity contact, but they're also not making a lot of it. So I wouldn't expect that to translate to runs right away. For Boston and the Mets, offensively, I'd be looking to play some overs here in the short term, or be looking to play their sides if they're reasonably priced. For the Rockies, Indians, and Blue Jays, I would not take that same approach. So, again, over the long term, you want to look for these types of things. Over the small term, there's going to be variance in those small sample sizes, but as you get a higher number of batted balls of this type of contact at a team that's hitting a lot of them and not having success with them, they will get better. So Boston and the Mets, two teams I expect to take a big increase here offensively. Rockies, Indians, and Toronto will have a better batting average. If the additional chances come around, then that's where I want to look to back them. For example, here, we talk about Arizona. I talked a lot about Arizona on Thursday. They have 141 batted balls of 95 plus, which is kind of in the middle of the pack. When we talked about them on Thursday, they had a .661 batting average and an .896 weighted on base average. Well, as we look at it here on Monday, .638 batting average, .849 weighted on base average. So a 47-point drop in weighted on base average, a 23-point drop in batting average on high-velocity contact. They don't make a whole lot of it. It didn't look sustainable to me. And we're seeing here they are coming back to the pack. Had some unders here this weekend in their games. That's what you want to look for there. Degrees of regression. I think the most important way to phrase that. All right, Chris via email with a very long look ahead at college football here, asking if there are some go-to sources for look-ahead lines week to week in college football, something along the lines of what Ken Palm and Bart Torvik do for college basketball. He says, I know that Jeff Sagarin gets used a lot. Yeah, Sagarin is a pretty decent one to look at there. I think a lot of odds makers do like to take Sagarin and his thoughts into the metrics. A lot of odds makers obviously make their own power ratings. They're going to mirror what other offshores get. As far as, sources that I've seen, I'll start working on my power ratings here in the month of June, and I'll have some projected lines for that. Brad Powers posts his over at pregame. Colin Wilson posts his at Action Network. Obviously, you take the power rating and then slap something reasonable for home field advantage on it. I haven't come across a Ken Pom or a Bart Torvik for college football yet. Hopefully, there's one coming out here soon. If anyone has seen one, let me know at Skating Tripods on Twitter. But, again, you just want to sort of crowdsource different opinions out there, see how people are rating these teams. And always, too, this is a very important thing. This is something that I did last year a lot. If you are putting together your own power ratings, or if you're using somebody else's to find numbers, put those numbers together on Friday before the games are played, because you don't want that overreaction to creep in. A lot of times you're going to find your overlay against the line based on that overreaction from one sample size, and especially very early on in the season. So put your numbers together before the games are even played. Then you can compare to the line that's out there once the line actually gets posted and decide if you want to take that game, if maybe you were, evaluating a team incorrectly, something like that. Very important thing. Obviously, again, we'll talk a lot more about that as we go throughout the summer months here, but I've not seen a Ken Pom or a Torvik for college football as of yet. Chainsaw via email sends me a handful of questions here. Says, when you or your guests talk about percentage of money on a side and percentage of plays on a side, what site are you getting that information from? Typically, it's going to be from Sports Insights. Don Best has one. SBR has one. A lot of places have odd screens. We have one over at Bang the Book as well. Sports Insights is usually the most accurate one because I think that they take the best share of the market in terms of the books that they use on their odd screen. So a lot of times when people like Kyle Hunter or somebody else talk about that, usually coming from somewhere like Sports Insights. Do you know of a good site to identify which side the public is on? Look, you go to any odd screen, if you see the public, the ticket count on one side and the money on the other side, that's a sharp versus public split. If you see a heavy public percentage on a side and a line movement going the other way, that's a sharp versus public split. A lot of times it's not even so much about using the sites. It's just about having an understanding for the market. If Golden State is a 9-point favorite and the line's coming down, that's a sharp line move on the other side because the public is not fading Golden State. You see money coming in against Duke. The public is not fading Duke. Stuff like that. Those are things that you can look for. I think as you get an understanding for the marketplace, I think it's much easier to see what those sharp versus public splits are. Also from Chainsaw, when looking at trends, how can you tell whether something is a good trend versus just a random occurrence? And this is going to sound like kind of a dickheaded answer, but a lot of times it's just, does the trend make sense? Does it seem like it's statistically relevant? You're going to see, Team X is 11-3 on Tuesdays. Doesn't matter. That's just coincidence. Is the team, 7-2 on Tuesdays after having Monday off? Maybe that's a little bit of a different thing coming out of an off day, but that has nothing to do with Tuesday. It has to do with coming out of an off day for the bullpen to get, in better shape or something like that. Now, if you've got Team Y is 35-6 against the spread with 2 or more days rest, well, that probably makes sense. They're a better team with rest. Are they a veteran team that needs the rest? Do they have a good coach with extra time to prep? Are they a better defensive team when rested? That's a trend that makes some more sense. Team off a blowout loss is a favorite of 10 or more points. 45-21 ATS as an underdog in the last 66 games, something like that. Okay, teams bounce back off of outlier performances. The market overreacts, overcorrects, so that team probably will do better against the spread. You get a team that loses as a 10-point favorite, the public's going to go, well, I don't like them. And the odds makers are going to go, oh, well, maybe they're not that good. And the line's going to adjust. Well, sometimes the line over-adjusts. So that's a trend that could be statistically significant because you get that bounce-back effort, you get that overreaction in the betting market. Those are all things that you want to look for. So I don't think that there's randomness in a trend like that. I think a lot of times trends are random or the sample sizes aren't big enough. Teams 5-0 in its last 5 as a favorite. Okay. Well, who did they play? What were the spreads? Were they 5-0 as a favorite ATS covering spreads of 3, 3.5, 6, 1, and 2.5? Okay. What does that mean? Were they 5-0 ATS as a double-digit favorite? Are they just blowing teams out? Okay, maybe that's a little bit more statistically relevant. So I think for trends, you just want to ask yourself, does this matter to me? Is this something I would use in my handicapping? If you would, it's a good trend. If you wouldn't, it's probably a random occurrence or just something that's not statistically significant. So that'd be my answer to that question. Then finally, says, how can you tell when something is going to regress versus just being bad luck? And like I said, a lot of times I talk about degrees of regression. That's very important. If a team is 1 for 17 with runners in scoring position over its last 5 games, that's bad luck. It's not sustainable to be that bad. No matter how bad of an offense you are, it's not sustainable to be that bad. If you're a team that's making a lot of high velocity contact and you're not having success with it, that's bad luck. So again, it's just sort of, you just want to ask yourself, how much does this mean to me? Does it seem like it's a random occurrence? Does it seem like it's just happenstance? That's probably bad luck or just, something you don't want to factor into your handicapping. If it seems like it's something that could very much get better for a reason, then it's something you want to factor into the equation. So a lot of good questions here on the Monday Mailbag. Once again, at Skating Tripods on Twitter or Adam at bangthebook.com. All right, so we go beyond the box score here. Let's take a look at the Indians getting swept by the Kansas City Royals. And obviously not a fun series here for me as an Indians fan by any means. But when you look at everything going on with the Indians here so far this year, it's bad. Carlos Carrasco looks terrible. Corey Kluber looks awful. I was right about Corey Kluber and right about all my concerns with him. Both guys with velocity down, command way down. Carrasco's dead last in average exit velocity against. Corey Kluber just walked 5 guys for the first time in his career. He hadn't even walked 4 guys in the start since April 27th, 2017, and that was the Houston Astros, who are a very good lineup and have been for a while. It's a bad look right now. Mike Clevenger's already hurt. Carrasco's command is gone. Kluber's command and control are declining. This is the worst-case scenario for the Indians. This is what opens up the division for somebody else to win it. And yes, it's still very early. They're going to be without Carrasco till the All-Star break, which is a problem. Or Clevenger, excuse me. Maybe Carrasco and Kluber get this thing figured out, but it's a bad look, man. I mean, the Royals had 32 at-bats with a runner in scoring position in this 3-game series. They had 17 on Friday alone. Carrasco didn't make it out of the first inning. The Royals stole home. They had 5 stolen bases. The Indians are just a mess. They're not playing well fundamentally. They're not pitching well. They're not hitting at all. Francisco Lindor's out on rehab. Jason Kipnis is coming back. But, man, the pitching has to be the anchor for this team because even when healthy, the offense is probably average at best. With a lot of the moving parts in the outfield and stuff like that, it's just a bad, bad, bad look right now for the Cleveland Indians. And, the Twins are kind of up and down. The Tigers have gotten off to a good start and then fallen back a little bit. The Royals aren't very good. The Central Division's a mess. It's terrible. And right now the Indians have a lot of problems. They're toxic. It's just they're toxic right now. You can't back them in any situation at this point in time because you don't know if you're going to get the offense. Bauer and Bieber have been their 2 best starters, but Bauer walked 6 a couple starts ago, gave up 10 hits last time out. They're toxic. You can't take them right now. On the other hand, it's tough to fade them because, their pitching staff is pretty strong. We'll see what they look like here going up in Seattle, where Seattle cooled off a little bit, as I'll talk about here in a minute. But it's a bad look for the Indians right now. It really, really is. How about the White Sox taking 2 out of 3 from the Yankees? And something to keep in mind here with the Yankees, with Gary Sanchez out, we'll see how long he's actually out for. Kyle Higashioka, the catcher yesterday, 6 stolen base attempts against him from the White Sox. Opposing teams are 22 for 27 stealing bases against him. So when Austin Romine doesn't play, look for that to be a thing from a total standpoint with the Yankees here of teams just trying to run wild on them. The White Sox did it yesterday. I presume when Higashioka gets some more starts here going forward, that will be something that a lot of teams look to do. I want to touch on Jay Happ here for a second. Jay Happ this season, 12 1/3 innings, 19 hits, 12 runs, 4 homers, 5 walks, 13 strikeouts. Big drop in ground ball percentage, over an 11% drop in ground ball percentage the last 2 years. And the problem for Happ here is that the Yankees tried to change him a little bit coming into the season. He threw a lower percentage of fastballs in his first start, and it didn't work. And maybe the Yankees or maybe Happ said, you know what, let's go back to what we know works. Well, in his last 2 starts, 75% fastball usage, 77.3% fastball usage in his most recent start, and it still didn't work. This is a real bad look for Jay Happ right now. I don't know if this is an injury situation or if it's just Happ regressing quite a bit. We knew that this was going to be a tough park for him. If he's walking guys and doesn't have that fastball command, he's in real bad shape. So Jay Happ probably on auto fade right now until we see him figure this thing out a little bit. The Astros went up to Seattle and swept the Mariners. Astros 28 at-bats with the runner in scoring position in this series. The Mariners with only 10. So the Mariners offense did regress in this series quite a bit. Did still hit 3 solo home runs. They are an extreme fly ball team. They will hit some home runs. But as an extreme fly ball team, they're probably not going to have as much success as they've had from a batting average on balls in play standpoint. Won't get as many chances with runners in scoring position. The Mariners are going to be a feast or famine kind of offense. Where they hit for power, they do okay. When they don't, they will struggle. Here in this series, struggle because they just didn't have a whole lot of chances here. You face command-heavy teams or pitchers like Justin Verlander and Garrett Cole, it's going to be tough for you. It was tough for the Mariners in this series. They also struggled quite a bit with Brad Peacock, who was the bulk reliever behind Wade Miley in Friday's game. The Astros bullpen here, 11 innings, 5 hits, 3 runs, only 2 of them earned, 2 walks, struck out 15 in 11 innings here. They have the highest relief strikeout percentage by over a percentage point over the Pittsburgh Pirates. 2.70 ERA, 2.87 FIP, 3.10 xFIP. The Astros, again, like I talked about, you want to back bullpens that don't walk dudes. The Astros bullpen does not walk dudes. They are excellent. They are a team to definitely trust from a first 5 standpoint with their starting rotation, and especially from a full game standpoint, as we saw here this weekend with that sweep. Speaking of bullpens, I want to talk about some ERA to FIP gaps here with the bullpens. Some bullpens that are in line for some positive regression, some bullpens in line for some negative regression as we look from a full game standpoint. Washington Nationals have a 7.75 bullpen ERA, 5.22 FIP. That's just a bad group. Royals, 6.93 ERA, 5.14 FIP. Just a bad group. Oakland, 4.39 ERA, 3.32 FIP. They've had some bad luck here. Joakim Soria has not pitched well at all. He's had a couple of substantial blow-ups here so far this season. He's really done a number on their ERA. He cost us a sweep on the board yesterday with his blow-up in the 8th inning. The A's are a better bullpen than they've shown so far. They will get better. Same thing with the Phillies. 4.64 ERA, 3.83 FIP. Bad luck for them. They will get better. A lot of times when you look at bullpens here specifically, left on base percentage is a pretty big indicator. If it's a low left on base percentage in the 60 to 65% range, they're going to have bad numbers. If it's a high left on base percentage in the 85% range, they're going to have good numbers. A lot of times those things do normalize as the season goes along. These specific bullpens I'm talking about, very low left on base percentages here so far, but also some bad luck in the equation, specifically with Oakland. A guy like Joakim Soria who has a track record, just not pitching particularly well here so far. He will get better. The bullpen will get better. I think the A's, despite a 4.39 ERA, I think they're like 3rd in bullpen WAR, something like that. So they will be a much better bullpen as we go along here. How about some bullpens that are going to regress quite a bit? The St. Louis Cardinals is number 1 on my list. 3.14 ERA, 5.28 FIP. They're very lucky right now. 84.2% left on base percentage, a 180 batting average on balls in play against. The Cardinals bullpen is going to regress. I promise you that. I don't know when, but it will regress, and it will probably be a pretty significant degree of regression for that St. Louis bullpen. The Tigers, same thing. 2.44 ERA, 4.56 FIP, 89.8% left on base percentage so far, 2.22 BABIP against. The Tigers are a group that will fall off here. Offensively, they're already not particularly good. Detroit is probably a fade team here for me in the near future. The Angels, 2.08 ERA, 3.33 FIP, low walk, high strikeout rate so far. The 89.1% left on base percentage will come back to earth. But if they sustain the high strikeout, low walk rates, that would be very good for them. They could be a much better bullpen than I anticipated. A couple others keep an eye on here. The Rangers, 4.47 ERA, 5.53 FIP. Indians, 2.36 ERA, .331 FIP. Reliever left on base percentage last year, overall league-wide, 73.1%. A lot of teams will fall around that mark. Some will be higher, some will be lower. You'll know the reasons why. But with some teams here in the mid to upper 80s, regression coming for them, specifically looking at the Cardinals and the Tigers. Now, SIERA may be a better indicator for bullpens here. That's skill interactive ERA. It's like FIP, but a little bit more detailed in that it takes into account batted ball data, ground balls, fly balls, line drives, home runs, all that type of thing. So for SIERA here, the bottom five, the Royals at 506, Twins at 5 even, Diamondbacks 474, Cubs also 474, Cardinals 473. Big regression candidate there, as I mentioned already. The best bullpens from a SIERA standpoint so far, the Astros at 278, they're very good. Giants 320, they're very good. Pirates 329, they're very good. Padres 336, Angels 344, Yankees 351, Red Sox 354. So those are probably your best bullpens here right now. I would expect the A's to work their way into that discussion also. But SIERA is a pretty good one for looking at bullpens because it takes into account that batted ball data, and it also evaluates strikeouts and walks a lot more than FIP will. So SIERA, I think the best stat you want to look at here in terms of run metrics for bullpens. All right, let's go down the lines here, talk about the line moves that we saw dating back to Friday. Patrick Corbin money did hit the board as expected against Trevor Williams and the Pirates. Williams pitching pretty well here so far, but that Corbin money coming in with regularity now for the Nationals. So another fade of Chad Bettis, third straight time money's come in against Chad Bettis, who actually pitched pretty well. And quite frankly, he had good road splits last year. He was horrendous at home, but the market coming in against him in all three of his starts here thus far. The Rays took money in their game against Toronto. It was with Ryan Stanek as the opener. Ryan Yarbrough, top 5 in average exit velocity against last I looked. I know he's at least top 10. So when Yarbrough follows Stanek, the Rays will take money in those games. Saturday, we saw a fade of Adam Wainwright down in Mexico against the Cincinnati Reds. The Dodgers took money on a bullpen day against the Brewers. That was Caleb Ferguson and Zach Davies in that one. Likely more of a fade of Davies than anything else, but he wound up pitching really well in that one. Keep in mind, those bullpen days can be really tricky handicaps. And, it's interesting because, we've seen the depreciation of starters because they're just not working as deep into games and all that here lately. But then you get these bullpen days, and you need multiple relievers to get the job done. Those are tricky handicaps because you would think seeing a different arm slot, a different arm angle, a different repertoire every time through the lineup would be really tough on these hitters. But also it's tough for all these guys to come out and perform really well in these bullpen days. So those are really tricky handicaps, and generally those are games I tend to stay away from. Saw money come in against CC Sabathia. That will happen a lot this year, even though I think he's a very underrated dude. I like CC a lot. I think we will get some value waiting out line moves on him as this season goes along. Saw money hit the board on Michael Pineda once again. Not a big surprise there. Money hit the board on Blake Snell. Again, not a big surprise there. And Blake Snell is another one of those why I think that the line moves are more predicated now on ERA to FIP as opposed to ERA to XFIP. Because Blake Snell's never going to post a league average home run to fly ball percentage. He looked like something of a fade candidate coming into the year, but the markets have been backing him because he's got such a low FIP. So I think that Blake Snell is a pretty good indicator of why the line moves here are more ERA to FIP, ERA to XFIP. Sunday, we saw money come in on the Marlins. That was a fade of Vince Velasquez and the Phillies. A lot of Marlins money at home here so far, and that will probably continue to be a trend here. The Marlins are going to play low-scoring games at home, which gives them a chance. On the road, they're so bad offensively that it's very tough for them. But at home, where they can win games 3-2, 4-3, stuff like that, there's a better chance for them to win the ball games. So that's why we've kind of seen that in some of these Marlins games here this year. Saw a big fade of Herman Marquez on Sunday, not buying the Rockies offense. He threw a one-hitter, almost a no-hitter, gave up his hit in the 8th inning. Marquez looked really, really good. Kudos to him for that start. Saw money come in on Jose Barrios and the Twins. Not a surprise. Barrios, very good in the exit velocity department here this season to go along with his nice peripherals. Money came in against Corey Kluber. That will probably keep happening, especially after you walk 5 against the Royals and pitch as bad as he did. Money on Garrett Cole on Sunday. Garrett Cole's going to take money just about every time he takes the mound these days. You got money there on Sunday, and it worked out favorably for those that laid the big number. No plays for me here on Monday. This card is absolutely awful. I don't have much interest in this card whatsoever. A lot of words, over 3,600 of them on today's card over at bangthebook.com, but just no plays for me here with today's dumpster fire of a card. All right, so we take a look at the week ahead here. I got 5 series to mention, and like I said, this will kind of make up for the fact that I didn't have any picks for today's card. The Red Sox and the Yankees here. You got Chris Sale against James Paxton. Big start for both guys here on Monday. Tuesday, Paxton very erratic with the fastball against Houston. That was a game I watched because we had the under in that one. He did not look good. Chris Sale, well-documented velocity loss. Can't love that here for the Red Sox. Nate Eovaldi and Jay Happ are going to go on Wednesday. I just mentioned Jay Happ, probably a fade guy. The problem is Nate Eovaldi has not pitched well either. So 4 very important two-gamer for the Red Sox and the Yankees. Astros and Oakland also playing a 2-gamer here. Oakland looking for some retribution after not playing well against Houston down at the Juice Box. Colin McHugh, Frankie Montas, a game I will look at the under for tomorrow. McHugh's done a fantastic job, especially against righties. Montas doing a great job with that increased splitter usage. He's been very, very good for Oakland, so that's an under candidate for me. The other game in that series here, Wade Miley and Aaron Brooks. Not a whole lot of thoughts on that one, but I think Oakland's bullpen is a positive regression candidate. The Astros have a really good bullpen. I think McHugh and Montas tomorrow could be an under look for me. We'll see if we get 7.5 or if we get 8. If it's 7, I won't have any interest, but we'll see what that matchup looks like tomorrow. Rockies and the Padres. Did Nolan Arenado finally get that big hit to get him going? Walked a couple of times, then hit the 3-run homer off Derek Holland yesterday. Is that what gets him going? Is that what gets this offense going? We'll find out here maybe in this 2-game series with the Rockies and the Padres. Antonio Senzatella, Joey Lucchesi in the first one tonight. John Gray, Nick Margevicius on Tuesday. I'll probably be on John Gray tomorrow. Margevicius not locating particularly well. He's done a good job of minimizing mistakes with a 167 BABIP and a 97.8% left on base percentage. 50% ground ball rate this year for Margevicius, but opponents only 2 for 22 on ground balls. Again, ground ball batting average typically in the 240 range. 2 for 22 off of Margevicius so far. That's second to Zach Godley and Merrill Kelly. I think Margevicius is a regression candidate. Probably look to fade him tomorrow. If I decide not to, depending on the price, I'll look to fade him in his next starts coming up because obviously we need the Rockies to show some signs of life here offensively. The Cardinals and the Brewers. This is a 3-gamer. Dakota Hudson, Freddie Peralta tonight, Jack Flaherty, Brandon Woodruff tomorrow, Michael Wacha, Corbin Burns on Wednesday. 3 righties for the Brewers who have crushed lefties so far, have had their share of issues against some righties. Cardinals, again, looking for that bullpen regression. Speaking of bullpens, the Brewers getting Jeremy Jeffress back for this series, but poor results in his rehab outings. Velocity was down. Might be a fade candidate from a live betting standpoint when Jeremy Jeffress comes in. I hope the Brewers don't throw him in high leverage right away, but if that winds up being the case, I'd probably look to fade the Brewers from a live betting standpoint if Jeffress is thrown into the fire right away. Finally, one more series to take a look at here. The Pirates and the Tigers. Joe Musgrove and Matt Boyd tomorrow. Trevor Williams and Spencer Turnbull on Wednesday. Quick 2-gamer, but these are both under candidates for me. As long as the wind isn't blowing out, I'll probably have a piece of the under in both of these. Boyd's been dominant. Musgrove is great at limiting hard contact. Also doesn't walk guys, which, as I mentioned already, has been a hallmark of the Tigers' offense so far. Trevor Williams with the great contact management metrics. Spencer Turnbull's got some really underrated stuff. He's limited hard contact so far, gotten some swings and misses. I think both of these games set up as under candidates here at spacious Comerica Park. We'll see if the weather cooperates. But again, Pirates and Tigers with Musgrove and Boyd, Williams and Turnbull. I get a couple of under candidates there for me. Lots of stuff here on today's show, obviously. If you want to get the notes from the Bettor's Box, adam@bangthebook.com via email is the way to get those. So I'll be back with another edition of the Bettor's Box here coming up on Thursday. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And remember that you will never strike out when you're in the Bettor's Box.